Have you ever wanted something so much it felt like a sickness? A fever in your bones that wouldn't break? I knew a man like that once. His name was Ethan, and he worked in one of those glass and steel towers in Chicago, where dreams are drawn onto paper before they become buildings. He was all ambition, a man made of sharp angles and tailored suits. He wanted to be a name, a signature on the city's skyline. But there was a problem, and her name was Olivia. She was quiet. You might not notice her at first. She didn't announce her genius, it simply was. It lived in the elegant, impossible curves she sketched, in the way light seemed to obey her designs before a single brick was ever laid. Olivia was not a rival in the way you might think. She never fought for the spotlight, it just seemed to find her. While Ethan presented his projects with a booming voice and practiced confidence, Olivia would simply unroll her blueprints. A hush would fall over the boardroom. Clients would lean in, tracing the lines with their fingers as if touching something sacred. Her success was a quiet thing, a slow tide rising, while Ethan's felt like a frantic scramble. He'd win a contract, and the victory would taste like ash because he knew, deep down, that Olivia's rejected proposal had been the more beautiful, the more honest piece of work. Envy is a patient poison. It started as a whisper in his heart, and grew into a constant, bitter hum. He watched her one afternoon, lost in her work. She was using a particular pen, a simple silver fountain pen with a little weight to it. It was a gift, he'd overheard, from her grandfather. It glided across the vellum, leaving behind lines that were both precise and full of life. It seemed to him that the pen was not just a tool, but an extension of her very soul. The thought took root in his mind, small and dark and ugly. What if she lost it? What if that conduit, that little piece of her magic, was no longer hers? He saw her leave it on her desk when she went for coffee. His hand moved before his mind caught up. The pen was cool and heavy in his palm, a theft of the smallest, most personal kind. The idea was a splinter, and he couldn't get it out. He took the pen home, hiding it in his briefcase like a guilty secret. That night, the city lights of Chicago felt like 1,000 accusing eyes. He couldn't sleep. He found himself scrolling through the forgotten corners of the internet, the places where modern anxieties meet ancient fears. He typed words he didn't quite understand, how to stop a rival, how to bind talent, a spell to hold someone back. And there it was, a simple, unsettling ritual, a binding. Not to harm, the website promised, but to contain, to limit, to put a person's gifts into a little box and close the lid. All it required was a personal item, some black yarn, and intention. He looked at the silver pen gleaming on his nightstand. The first night felt like a foolish game. Ethan sat in his apartment, the only light coming from the street lamps below. The city was a distant, sleeping beast. He held Olivia's pen in one hand and a spool of black yarn in the other. The instructions were clear. He was to wrap the object while focusing all his thoughts on the person he wished to bind. He had to whisper his intentions into the threads. He felt ridiculous, a grown man playing with yarn and whispers, but the envy was a physical thing now, a knot in his stomach. He began to rap. Let her lose her focus, he whispered to the pen, his voice barely a sound. The yarn covered the cool silver, thread by thread. He did this for 7 nights. It became a secret sacrament of his jealousy. Each evening, as the sky bled from purple to black, he would retrieve the pen from its hiding place. The bundle was growing thicker now, a strange dark cocoon. His whispers grew bolder, more specific. Let her doubt her ideas. Let her lines become hesitant. Let her forget the feeling of a perfect design. He poured all of his own frustrations, his own feelings of inadequacy, into the wrapping. The pen disappeared completely beneath the layers of yarn, becoming a formless, muffled shape. He was not just covering the pen, he was silencing it. He was silencing her. On the 7th night, he tied the final knot and hid the dark little bundle in the back of an old shoebox. And then he waited. At first, nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. Olivia was the same as she had always been. She smiled her quiet smile. Her sketches were as brilliant as ever, and she won a small but prestigious local competition. Ethan felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. He had been a fool, of course. This was the modern world, a world of concrete and commerce, not whispers and yarn. Magic wasn't real. His envy was his own problem, a demon he had to wrestle with alone. He tried to forget the 7 nights, the strange intimacy of wrapping an object that belonged to her, the dark wishes he had sent out into the world. He told himself it was just a way of venting, a harmless ritual to clear his head. But then, little things began to change. Things you could easily explain away. Olivia came into a meeting looking tired, unprepared. She fumbled with her presentation, her voice losing its quiet authority. A week later, she presented a new concept that was fine. It was just fine. It was competent and professional, but the spark, the daring elegance that defined her work was gone. It was as if she were tracing someone else's designs. The partners exchanged glances. Ethan felt a cold thrill in his chest. He saw her at her desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper, the ghost of her grandfather's pen no longer in her hand. She was just staring, her brow furrowed in a frustration he knew all too well. The magic was working, or perhaps it was something far worse. The change in Olivia was not a sudden storm, but a slow, creeping fog. Her confidence, once an effortless and natural part of her, began to fray at the edges. She started second-guessing her instincts, the very things that had made her work so singular. She would spend days on a single detail, erasing and redrawing until the paper was worn thin, her frustration a palpable cloud around her desk. The easy flow of ideas that once came to her had slowed to a trickle, then a drip. People in the office started talking. They said she was burned out, that the early success had gone to her head and now the pressure was getting to her. No one suspected a thing. How could they? It was all so terribly, plausibly normal. Ethan meanwhile began to rise. With Olivia's light dimming, his own seemed to shine brighter by default. Her hesitation created a vacuum, and his ambition rushed in to fill it. He took on the project she faltered on, adding his own solid, if uninspired, vision to her half-finished concepts. He was praised for his leadership, for his ability to get things back on track. He was the dependable one, the man who could deliver. He won the big commission, the one they had both been circling for months. It was a skyscraper that would reshape a small part of the Chicago skyline. His name would be on it. It was everything he had ever wanted. He tried not to look at her too often. When he did, he saw a ghost of the woman she had been. The quiet certainty in her eyes had been replaced by a pervasive anxiety. She became withdrawn, avoiding the communal lunches and after-work drinks she used to quietly enjoy. He once saw her in the archives, just standing among the old blueprints, her hand resting on a drawing from years ago, a project from a master architect. She had a look on her face of such profound and bottomless loss, as if she were trying to remember a language she had once spoken fluently, but could no longer recall. A deep, unsettling guilt began to gnaw at Ethan, a constant, low-level hum beneath the noise of his success. The final straw was a small, internal review. Olivia presented a design for a community library. It was clumsy, derivative, and utterly without soul. It was the work of a student, not a prodigy. The partners were gentle, but their disappointment was obvious. After the meeting, Ethan saw her pack up her desk. She didn't make a scene. She was as quiet in her departure as she had been in her brilliance. She simply erased herself from the office. He received the email the next morning. Olivia had resigned, effective immediately, citing personal reasons. He stood in his office, looking out at the city he was helping to build, and felt nothing but a hollow, echoing emptiness. The victory was his, and it felt like a curse. Years passed. The world does not stop for one person's regret. Ethan's career flourished in the way he had always dreamed it would. He became a partner at the firm. His name was attached to glittering buildings that pierced the clouds. He had the respect, the money, the acclaim. He had everything he thought he wanted, but, a strange melancholy settled over him, a persistent grayness that no amount of success could burn away. He would sometimes look at his own designs, the solid, impressive structures that won awards, and feel a profound sense of fraud. They were good, they were not beautiful. They lacked the one thing Olivia had possessed in abundance, a soul. He never threw the pen away. He couldn't. The shoebox moved with him from his small apartment to a sprawling downtown condo with panoramic views. It was tucked away in the back of a closet, a dark secret in a life of bright, polished surfaces. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while searching for some old tax documents, his fingers brushed against the familiar cardboard. He pulled it out and lifted the lid. There it was, the small, dense bundle of black yarn, dusty and forgotten. He sat on the floor of his expensive closet and began, with trembling fingers, to unwind it. Thread by thread he undid his work from all those years ago. The yarn came away, and finally the silver pen was revealed. It was untarnished, cool to the touch, as if no time had passed at all. Holding it felt like holding a physical manifestation of his guilt. The whispers from those 7 nights seemed to echo in the silent room. Let her doubt. Let her forget. He saw it all with a horrifying clarity, the quiet, steady erosion of a brilliant mind, the slow extinguishing of a unique talent. He hadn't just sabotaged a colleague, he had stolen something elemental from her, something he could never give back. He had broken something beautiful because he couldn't stand to see it shine. The weight of it, the sheer stupid waste of it all crashed down on him. He had to find her. He had to try to apologize, even if it was pointless, even if she wouldn't understand what he was apologizing for. It was a desperate, selfish need to unburden himself. He started with the firm's old records, but her forwarding address was long out of date. He searched for her online, a frantic, obsessive quest. He scrolled through social media, through architectural forums, through alumni networks. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. There were no new designs, no mentions in articles, no digital footprint at all. Olivia, the woman who could sketch magic, had simply disappeared, leaving nothing behind but the ghost of her talent and the memory of a few old colleagues and the heavy silver pen in Ethan's hand. In the end, there was only silence. Ethan never found her. He hired a private investigator, a man who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. The investigator turned up nothing more than a cold trail, a move to a small, nondescript town in the Pacific Northwest, and then nothing. It was as if she had walked out of her life and kept walking until she had stepped right off the map. Ethan was left alone with his success and the heavy, useless knowledge of what he had done. He was a man haunted not by a ghost, but by the absence of one. He was haunted by the empty space where a brilliant career should have been, where a gifted person should have been. He keeps the pen on his desk now. It sits in a fine leather holder, a stark reminder among the clutter of his achievements. Some days he picks it up, feels its perfect weight, and tries to sketch. But his hands only produce the same competent, lifeless lines as always. The magic was never in the pen. He knows that now. The magic was in her. The pen was just a symbol, a focus for his own corrosive envy. The ritual, the yarn, the whispers in the dark. Perhaps they were just a ceremony he needed to perform to give his own quiet, persistent negativity a physical form, to grant it permission to do its work. Or perhaps they were something more. It doesn't really matter which is true. We do this to each other sometimes. We bind people with our judgment, with our jealousy, with the little unspoken cruelties we think no one sees. We whisper our dark intentions not with yarn and spells, but with a dismissive comment, a shared rumor, or the simple, devastating act of withholding encouragement. We create small, invisible prisons for others, limiting their potential to make ourselves feel bigger. We think these are harmless acts, fleeting thoughts that dissipate into the air. But they don't. They linger. They take root. They can unravel a person just as surely as any curse whispered in the dead of night. Ethan still designs buildings. He stands on construction sites and watches his creations rise from the dirt, monuments to his ambition. But he knows they are all built on a compromised foundation. He won the game, but he lost something far more valuable in the process. He never learned how to create beauty, only how to recognize its absence. He is left with the quiet, unending regret for the light he chose to extinguish, and the cold, hard truth that some things, once broken, can never be unwound, and some words, once whispered, can never ever be taken back. The pen sits on his desk, silent and silver, a testament to a story with no final word.